Welcome back to 10 Things in the Light Novel that the anime missed for Ascendance of a Bookworm, Part 2, Volume 1. In the previous video, which covered the last book of Part 1, we talked about how Mine learns more about the devouring and how that affects her future prospects. We also learned how Mine and Lutz make some serious bank by making and selling some paper. Lutz prepares for his apprenticeship at the Gilbert Company, while Mine decides to work from home and stay with her family for the duration of time she has left. Part 1, Volume 3 also covers Lutz and Mine's baptism, her meeting Ferdinand for the first time, the confrontation at the temple, as well as several short stories from different characters' point of views that prepare us for the events that will unfold in Part 2 of this series. So here we are at last, Part 2, Book 1. This first book covers Season 2, Episodes 1 through 7. And you might say, 7 episodes should be plenty to cover just about everything in one volume of the light novel. But unfortunately, there were still some things that were left out. But don't you worry, I am here to fill you in. Keep in mind that this is not a comprehensive list of all the things missing from the novel. This is just my pick of things in the light novels that I found interesting but were missing from the anime. You ready? Let's get started. Oh, but before we begin, I think I better clarify the following. In the anime, this guy is the high priest, and this guy is the head priest. High priest, head priest. High priest, head priest. They're both priests. Confusing. So I am doing it the way the light novel does it. I am using High Bishop for Evil Santa and High Priest for my incomparable dreamboat, Ferdinand. Okay, so with that out of the way, we're finally ready to go. In the light novel, Ferdinand's introduction is him regretfully thinking something along the lines of, "The crushing didn't kill the High Bishop after all. Bummer." The High Bishop has just summoned him, and now that the old man has recovered from the crushing, he wants Ferdinand to report to him the outcome of the meeting with Mine and her parents. Ferdinand has way too much on his plate to do, but he has to comply and goes to see the High Bishop. We also get a lot of information about the state of things in the temple in this chapter. Let's just say the temple is in dire straits. It's running in the red. We already know that the conflict and the ensuing purge decimated the number of nobles, but here we learn exactly how it affected the workings of the Ehrenfest temple in particular. First, young school-aged nobles were summoned home so they could attend the Royal Academy. Later on in the light novels, we learned that this evil one, who must not be named, was one of those young blue-robed priests. He came from a med-noble family, which is pretty good status, but his magical power, or his mana, was so little that if it hadn't been for the purge, he would have been left to rot at the temple. After the school-aged blue robes were called home, next were the young marriage-age shrine maidens, so that they could marry, have kids, and fill in the ranks of the nobility. Finally, the most mana-rich blue robes, which included those who ran the temple, were summoned to the capital, called the Sovereignty, to serve at the temple there. As a result, the only blue robes left in the temple are those with the least amount of mana, and who were of no use to either their families or the Sovereignty. And of course, Ferdinand. Ferdinand is still left in the temple. But he is a special case. He is from a family of very high status and is a true noble, only joining the temple after he became an adult due to reasons involving his family. You see, though he is very accomplished, he is only the son of a mistress, and his father's wife hates him bitterly, to the point that he feared his life was in danger. His older brother, or rather his half-brother, is the legitimate son, born out of his father's wife, suggested that he retire from politics for his own safety and join the temple. And while he was at it, maybe he could also shake things up in there. Ferdinand had lived a peaceful and rather boring life before the purge. He'd been so bored he'd asked his half-brother to send him his books and his papers so he'd have something to do. Out of consideration for the other priests and shrine maidens in the temple who came from less financially blessed families, Ferdinand placed several of his valuable books at their disposal in the temple's book room so they could read them as well. But no one, absolutely no one, had had any interest in the books. Interestingly enough, though, the first to ever want to read the books was a young commoner girl named Mine. Now, once the number of priests dwindled, Ferdinand remained as the only one with enough magical power to do mana dedications, and on top of that, because he is of a high status, he is also given a promotion and basically left to run the temple as high priest, even though he's only 20 years old, and he alone is expected to bear the burden of mana dedications and the administration of the temple. He lives under such stress that he is often mistaken for a 25-year-old at best or a 30-year-old at worst. It sucks. He desperately needs help. That is why he is so willing to welcome Mine into the temple and meet all of her demands. She has what the temple needs: an abundance of mana, based on how she was able to crush the High Bishop, money, based on the Guild Master's report on how well her inventions have been selling, as well as a knack for management, as evidenced by the fact that she is the head of a workshop. Ferdinand recognizes her value and foresees that she'll be making huge profits in the future. For her own protection, Ferdinand decides to assign Mine a retainer who will give him detailed reports on her behavior so that he can ensure that she would not get into trouble or get tricked by people who would take advantage of her. Ferdinand looks around the room at his attendants and settles on Fran as the best candidate. Poor Fran. He doesn't understand that the reason he got assigned to serve Mine is that out of all of Ferdinand's attendants, he's the best fit. He's patient, always presents accurate and detailed reports, he is loyal, and he would be able to deal with the annoying spy that the priest would attach to Mine. I think it was a really good idea that Kazuki-sensei gave us this chapter right at the beginning of the book. We've already seen that Mine is quite the unreliable narrator, and as far as she's concerned, the head priest, Ferdinand, is a stern man and not someone that she feels she can trust just yet. Remember, she has a tendency to not look beyond people's outer facades. For a bookworm, she judges people by their covers much too often. And Ferdinand has covers and walls and layers and shields of all sorts to keep his motives and his true feelings hidden from everyone. So while Mine thinks in this book that Ferdinand is kind of cold and is just spying on her through his attendant, we light novel readers know from reading this chapter that he is actually against the bishop's high-handed ways, and he is genuinely trying to look out for Mine to the extent that he has placed a trusted aide of his to keep her from getting into trouble. And finally, what made this one of my favorite chapters in the whole book is the snark. In the meeting, his internal thoughts are quite funny because he's just so tired of dealing with that old man and his prideful and arrogant ways. When their meeting is over and Ferdinand leaves, he allows himself to murmur, "Good gods, he's a pain," rather than what he said in the anime, which was, well, that's certainly not ideal. I do wish that the adaptation would have been truer to the light novel in this case. I said this before on the ships videos which you must watch if you haven't already, by the way, that there is a reason why there are many people who ship Benno and Mine despite the huge age difference. They have a great working relationship, and together they just have a fun dynamic. Additionally, the chapters in this volume that cover Benno's meeting with the High Priest are absolute fodder for those of us who might ship them. On her first day at the temple, Mine and the High Priest talk about finances and her donation, and after work, she goes to Benno's to ask him to help her with delivering the donation, as she does not trust her attendants with carrying such a large sum of money. When Mine realizes that her wording to Fran about when Benno would come gave the impression that Benno would be there immediately, and when she sees how Benno and Mark panic and rush to prepare and change into expensive finery because they're meeting with a noble, she finally sees that by thoughtlessly joining the temple, she pretty much jumped into an entirely different world that could pose risk not only for her, but for those around her. She apologizes to Benno for wrapping him up in all of these problems, but Benno does something that actually surprised me. Rather than yelling at her and telling her off for being a thoughtless oaf or whatnot, he slips a flower hairpin into her bun and gives her an invincible grin, telling her not to worry. He will use this as an opportunity for business and tells her to leave things to him. I see them as becoming true business partners here, and as a true business partner, he tells her basically, "I got your back." Benno, Mark, and Mine get on the carriage, and on the way there, between waiting at the gate, sending off a message to the temple so attendants could come meet them, and so on, Mark writes down some stuff on paper while Benno makes sure to explain to Mine what she should expect would happen at that meeting and how she should behave and speak. She searches through her Urano memories and wonders if using phrases from a more archaic period would work in this case. When she says a really formal thank you and asks if it is any good, Benno is shocked at how well phrased it came out and wonders how exactly she learned that line. Happily, he doesn't make a big deal about it, though light novel readers have seen him time and time again grow super curious about her origins, and we know that he has had to keep reminding himself that it is better not to know. Mine describes the entrance they come in through as starkly different from the entrance she normally uses, which is reserved for commoners. And at yet another reminder that the world she stepped in is definitely ruled by class distinctions, her heart clenches in fear. But Daddy Benno reminds her to act the part, and she gets through to Fran with dignity and grace as expected of a noble. The light novels go into great detail on the procedures leading up to the meeting. Everyone knows their roles and acts the part accordingly, while Mine is doing her best to play catch-up and not bring shame to herself or her guests. The meeting begins with the handing over of donation money. The anime shows that they give only 5 small gold coins instead of the full 1 large gold coin she had promised to give. No explanation is given as to why though. Suffice it to say, she and Ferdinand came to the agreement that she would pay 5 small gold coins up front and then pay the remaining amount in monthly increments of 1 small gold coin a month. The question of bookworm currency and its equivalence to our own world's currency came up some time ago in one of the comments. I answered it then, but I'll also answer it here. Basically, the author based bookworm's currency on Japanese yens. 1 leon is the same as 1 Japanese yen. So a large gold coin would come equal to 10 million yen, or a little under 100,000 US dollars. Obviously, this is a very, very rough estimate. So, Mine basically gave the church here $50,000 in cash and is expected to give the rest of the money in 5 easy $10,000 monthly installments after that. Sounds reasonable, no? Mine relaxes once the gifts and donations have been presented, but Benno smacks her under the table, and when she looks down at his hand, sees that there is a slip of paper between his fingers. She is excited because in all her life as Mine or Urano, this is the very first time she's traded notes with a quote-unquote boy, even if the boy in question is only Benno. However, she is disappointed at the notes contest because it says, "Don't let your guard down, idiot." For it seems that the meeting only just began and Benno is bracing himself for what is next. The meeting proceeds pretty much as in the anime, except that we are treated to the whole ordeal of tea preparation. Once again, Mine is at a loss and chooses a tea at random. As Arno, Ferdinand's attendant, follows up and asks what milk she wants with it, she relies on Fran to help her choose the milk that will go best with it, because she just doesn't know how to respond. She sips from her tea and loves the gentle sweetness of it. She said that it was so good it made her heart flutter. And fun fact from the fan books, this tea that she chose at random actually remains her favorite, and she continues to take her Tea-Gab tea with Graubosch milk far into the future. While the anime gives us cute visuals of Chibi Benno and Chibi Ferdinand on the boxing ring during this meeting, this doesn't show up in the light novel. Instead, to lighten things up, the light novel has Benno pass Mine notes such as "be quiet" and "please shut up" and "don't say anything" written on them, as Mine continues to say blunder after blunder. When Mine finally realizes that these notes were what Mark had been busy writing on their ride to the temple, she is shocked. How could such a wonderful gentleman write such harsh notes ahead of time? And oh man, Mine, if you only knew just how ruthless that wonderful gentleman is. We already know from the previous book that Mark is savage. The meeting ends with them agreeing that the church would take 10% of Mine's workshop's net profits, which Mine reasons is low compared to Benno's 30%, which he takes as a handling fee for selling her products in his store, and chalks it up to Benno's skill in negotiating. As they are about to leave, the temple attendants prepare carpets for them to pray in, and Mine realizes that she's about to see Benno and Mark do the goofy glyco pose. She prepares herself to keep from laughing when suddenly she collapses. This leads to them cutting the farewells short. Benno totally freaks out when Mine collapses in the temple, and unfortunately the extent of his worry doesn't make it into the anime. In the light novel, it's almost as if he's reliving the painful memories of when his own girlfriend died. Later on in the novels, we learn that his old sweetheart had had the devouring too, so Mine's collapse really affected him. He has Mine lie down on the carriage seat with her head on his lap as a pillow. He covers her with his cloak and holds her cold hands to warm them up, which embarrasses her greatly. Even Mark has to remind him that Mine is not Liz. To which Benno replies, I know that, so don't say she'll be fine, because it's not that simple. You see, Benno knows that even though his girlfriend told him that he didn't have to worry about her, she still ended up dying. And I just love how far these two have come since the start of the series when they were still suspicious of each other. I'm not gonna lie and say that he's gotten soft in that respect. He's still a businessman through and through. But when it comes to Mine, that is tempered to a great extent. This is a very sweet scene, not just as fodder for all those who ship Benno and Mine. Mine trusts and relies on Benno to guide her after all this time, and Benno has come to care for Mine as a person, looking out for her out of true affection, not just because she is a tool to generate more income and wealth. Before going into the last item that I'll cover in this video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and also I want to remind you to please like this video if you've enjoyed it so far, and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to hit that notification bell so that you know when my next video comes out. In the anime, we see Mine wearing this cute little ensemble, but we don't really know where it came from. It's not her usual commoner clothing, and it's not her Gilberta Company apprentice clothing either. So where and how did she get it? And while we're at it, how did she come up with the clothes for her attendants? The light novel tells us all about this. So when Mine learns that gray-robed priests and attendants don't have regular clothes of their own that they can wear when going outside of the temple, she asks Benno's help in getting good clothes for them. Lutz also joins them, in part because Benno told him to do so even though it was on his day off, and in part because Lutz also needed to add some casual clothing to his wardrobe that he could wear while on the north part of town, something of better quality than the patched-up hand-me-downs, without them being as expensive as his Gilberta Company outfit. Mine also gets the idea to get some clothes for herself, and having never been clothes shopping in this new world, the idea is super exciting to her. She also invites Tuli to join them, telling her that it would be an educational experience for her to learn about clothing in the north side of town, and Tuli agrees to join them instead of going to the forest as she usually would on her days off. They meet with Lutz outside their building the next day. Ralph, Lutz's brother, who you will remember has a crush on Tuli, is also there, but he is surprised that Tuli is not going to the forest with them too. She explains what they will be doing as the four of them walk together part of the way. They split up once they reach the main street, Ralph to join the other kids that are going to the South Forest, while Mine, Tuli, and Lutz all walk hand in hand toward the northern side of town to learn more about their trade. Mine notes the symbolism in the growing distance between them and feels a little sad about what it could mean. They meet up with Benno at the Gilberta Company, and after he takes them to see the progress of the Italian restaurant, they finally go to a used clothing store that he has some connections with. Mine notes the differences between a second-hand store in a fancy part of town and one that her family would shop at in the southern part of town. The one her family usually goes to is pretty much a mess. The clothing is dirty and is either grayish or brown colored. The merchandise lacks any kind of organization as well, though they do separate clothing by size, but they just pile up similarly sized clothing in baskets, and that's about it. The one Benno took him to, however, had colorful clothing of good quality, and each article of clothing was hung on cross-shaped hangers. The lady in charge of the store teases Benno for arriving with a bunch of kids, but he shuts that down pretty quickly and explains that he is there to train his apprentice. Both Lutz and Tuli grew up in an environment where the sturdiness of clothing mattered more than the style or the color or any other consideration, and they hadn't yet learned how to develop an eye for style or quality. Mine, however, demonstrated that she had a pretty good grasp of these fundamentals, and Benno notes this and once more wonders about how she learned all that she knows. Mine doesn't tell him, of course, but in her life as Serrano, she read plenty of magazines and books on style and color coordination. Mine uses Lutz to estimate clothing size that would fit Gil, but Lutz draws the line at her using him to try out a dress for Delia. She still has him stand still and measures the clothing against his back, saying that Thule is much bigger than Delia, and she has no other choice but to use Lutz, who is around the same size as Delia. Benno gives the kiddos a lecture about clothing. He starts teaching them about colors, and for practice has them pick out colors that would fit Mine the best. Then, he talks about style and how it reflects a person's social status and position, saying that wearing clothes too fancy for your station would end up getting you into trouble, pointing to Mine's baptismal dress as a prime example of this. After the lecture, he sets Lutz and Thule against each other on a friendly competition, giving them the challenge of picking out the best outfit for Mine, with the winner being the one whose outfit Mine picks and ends up buying. They come rushing at her with the dresses they picked for her and have her try on the clothes at a changing room. As she does so, Mine gets the opportunity to look into a mirror hanging in the changing room and is able to see at last how she actually looks like. She gets to see that she has large golden eyes and pretty features like Aoife's, and that aside from the shape of her eyes, she doesn't resemble Thule much. Additionally, her skin has a sickly pallor that is unappealing and is made even more dramatic by the dark blue color of her hair. But that's okay, Mine, you're still super cute to us and we love you just the way you are. In fact, Lutz and Thule find her super cute, especially with the dresses that they pick out for her. But much to their disappointment, she doesn't pick either one of the dresses that they chose. Instead, she picks out an embroidered blue skirt, a cute bodice-like vest, and a white blouse with long sleeves and lace decoration. She explains to them that with this outfit, she can maximize her options by mixing and matching with her existing apprentice clothing. Lutz and Thule are shocked and a little sad that she didn't pick either of their choices, but Benno cheers them up and encourages them to work and study hard for the next time. And Mine notes that their expressions changed to one of fierce determination born out of their newfound rivalry. Now, I am going to stop here, and I will pick up on the next video. As you all have noticed by now, with each video I am covering more and more things that the anime skipped, and the videos keep getting longer. There are many more interesting things that the anime didn't include that I think you'll enjoy, like properly meeting Johan, Hugo, and Ella, as well as the additional point of view stories that were not included in the anime. So I hope you'll join me for the second part. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as that will really help me a lot. Thank you so much for all your comments and support, and thank you also to these people who have helped me make these videos better as well. Until next time, bye bye!